Okay, now that I've got your attention, what's up guys, it's Between, welcome back to another video. 10 days ago, RobTop said he was working on a new sneak peek, and then after that sneak peek came out, he was going to start working on 2.2 again. Not all of us 2.2 cynics thought that that would mean that the new sneak peek would come out in the next couple of months, but 10 days later after that post, here it is, shadow dropped out of nowhere. No one was expecting this. This thing contains a lot of meat about platformer mode, and it's probably the most important sneak peek since the first one. This sneak peek is extremely dense, so today I'm going to be going over 25 things you might have missed from the new 2.2 sneak peek. Number one, kind of a nitpick, but for some reason, whenever RobTop moves along this very clearly stone floor, it makes a grass sound effect. Next up, this pouring green poison type object actually looks really weird. The flowing doesn't really look like a particle effect because the objects don't really kind of appear randomly and in the middle of nowhere. I think this might be a new flowing block, kind of like the fountain block we already have in game. Next up, we have this monster hanging out of the cage. One thing that's interesting about this cage is how it is actually broken, and the monster actually looks like it could just escape if it wanted to, but I think it might be a bit too thick to get through the bars. It's a little bit interesting. It kind of makes me think how many versions of this asset are there, whether or not it's just this one version of the cage, or maybe there's multiple versions of the cave, each one a bit more broken or with different art styles and stuff like that, and how that's organized in the editor, whether or not they're all different objects, kind of like what we have with the different variants of objects today, or whether that's just one object, and maybe in the edit special menu you can pick between which brokenness you want. That could be really interesting. Next up, coins. Coins are actually really interesting because there's a lot more to them than you might think initially. There are actually 3 particle effects tied to it, along with the old coin animation where it just kind of flies in the air and falls down, and the new sound effects trigger, which RobTop goes into much more detail at the end of the video. You've got 3 particle effects come out of this thing. You've got the kind of sparkle, the kind of particles that go out, you've got the circle that goes out, which already exists in the game, and you've also got the star shape that kind of expands out. It looks great. And right after that, we reach the first checkpoint block. Seeing this actually confirmed makes me really happy. I know checkpoints in an actual level outside of practice mode kind of go against the core philosophy of the game, but I think this is exactly what platformer mode needed. It works in the base game because it's constant. You can't stop yours going, and when you die, it takes you the same amount of time every time. It's all about consistency, right? But with platform mode, there's a lot more inconsistency because all your inputs are on yourself, and you are much more inconsistent than just moving in a straight line for the whole time. This is exactly what platformer mode needed, and I'm really glad we have it confirmed. One interesting thing about this though is that it actually uses the same effect from the mini portal. For those of you who don't know, the mini portal, when you use it, kind of had this lightning effect coming down from it, and the background also pulses white. As a creator, this has always annoyed me because I've had to cover the background in a black object if I have a black background, just so the background doesn't flash white for a few frames. It's always been really annoying. We can see the same lightning effect from that is used on the new checkpoint block, which is really interesting. It seems like on this block specifically, it's a lot thicker and a lot more noticeable. Some of you might not even notice that the mini portal had a lightning effect until now, but here it's a lot more obvious and it looks a lot better. Next up, I want to talk about the poison kind of lurking at the bottom of these poison pits. It actually looks a lot like the original water block we have in game, just a lot more pixelated. I don't know whether that's an effect that's applied on it, but more likely it's just a new object that RobTop added. Next up, these fireballs coming out of the walls are really cool. They've got 3 main components to them. The first one is the sucking in particle effect, which looks really nice, and the actual cannon that launches them turns orange. Next up, you've got the fireball, which has its own custom object, and then finally you've got the explosion on the floor, which also has its own custom VFX, but at the same time it does have a glow piece on top of it, which is a really nice subtle detail. This is probably something that everyone noticed because this level is full of sound effects, but every single jump orb has this kind of Mario-ish sound effect, which sounds really nice. Now coming up, we have this falling brick structure, and a really subtle detail. I don't really know if this was a necessary RobTop, but actually the glow on top of each individual falling brick changes color depending on how close it is to falling. You can actually see there's a smooth gradient between the ones that are just chilling on top and not falling at all, and the ones that are falling actually have a more purple glow, and they're actually tinted more red. RobTop, you didn't need to do this. It was really subtle, but I appreciate it. Next up, these saw blades. They're looking really cool, but one thing you might not have noticed about them is that they also have their own particle effect. As they move quickly, they leave a lingering trail of purple particles. Everything in this level has so much detail and life, and the sound effects just bring it all together. It's just amazing. One thing I want to talk about is these chains here. They actually move perpetually. In platformer mode, since you can stand in one place pretty much forever, there needs to be looping animations so stuff never just stops randomly while you're chilling. And it looks like with these chains, we'll probably use this system. Maybe this will be part of the keyframe system that was shown in one of the other sneak peeks, but this is really, really important for platformer mode, and I'm glad it's here. Next up, we've got another checkpoint, some really, really cool spinning obstacles, and a big old blue coin. Now, a lot of people have been speculating about what this is, but I think it is a placeholder for the new moon collectible. RobTop has confirmed that moons will be what you collect in platformer mode instead of coins. And in a lot of the sneak peeks, we've seen placeholders. For example, in the first sneak peek, the swing copter game mode didn't really have a finalized portal color. So I think this is a placeholder for the moon object. One other really nice detail is how the glow on the torches actually scales in and out. It doesn't just have the opacity go up and down. The glow on the torches actually scales up and down. It gets bigger and smaller, which is another really nice attention to detail. Next up, we seem to run through a den of crows. I don't know how this is actually going to work. Maybe these are all their own individual objects, because they are sitting on the floor already, and I don't know how that kind of contributes to the whole particle system. I'm sure it will be very easy to make it a particle system because it's all random, it's all procedural, but the fact that they are all sitting there kind of poses a lot of questions if it is a particle system about how particles are spawned and the amount of customization you actually get to use to spawn them. It's kind of insane when you think about it. Next up, we get to this really, really cool kind of cutscene of sorts, and there is just a lot to unpack here. What is this security camera looking thing? Why does it scan you? But the main big thing is that everyone's been talking about is voice acting in Geometry Dash.
I see you.
Now this is a bit weird if you really start to dig a little bit deeper. With the sound effect trigger we saw, there is a ton of preset sound effects that creators will be able to use for free in their Geometry Dash levels. And the fact that I see you with this really dark voice is kind of a really generic sound effect makes me kind of think whether or not it's voice acted specifically for the game, or whether it's just part of the larger asset pack and kind of a generic placeholder. But even so, the atmosphere it gives off is really, really cool, and nothing like we've ever seen in Geometry Dash before. Next up, I want to talk about the text. Not only do we have a new font, but the text letters actually move individually from each other. You can see that they have transitions. They fade in, they rotate, and they fade out individually on their own. This could either be two things: A, their own object, and RobTop just applied the same transforms to them one by one, maybe with a little bit of build helper, I know all about that. Or you can now individually transform each letter in a text object with their own IDs and on their own separately from each other. That's not like the biggest change in 2.2, but it's still kind of cool, especially if we can get a massive array of new fonts. One other subtle detail about these torches is how they actually give off light on the ground. This is definitely not the confirmation of a brand new 2.2 lighting system, real-time shadows, or anything like that. I'm sure this is just placed on the floor as an object with like a blending mode or something, but it's still a really, really nice detail. Next up, there's a lot of things you can actually figure out about the door that RobTop walks through. First off, it probably shows that this level is part of the tower, which was shown off in the last sneak peek. The tower is probably going to be Geometry Dash's first full campaign outside of Geometry Dash World, which isn't really part of the same game. I'm honestly really excited for the tower because all of it that we've seen uses copyright-free music, which is exactly what Geometry Dashers need to bring all the content creators back. 8-Bit Ryan, Corey Kenshin, what was his name, Matt Shea, something like that. They all left because their videos kept getting copyright striked, but I'm sure they love the game and they want to play it again. So having a full campaign with copyright-free music is just perfect. Now, another subtle detail about the door, after it opens, you can actually see the red glow coming out of it does move and kind of fade in and out randomly. I don't know how this was made. Maybe it's a looping effect that was kind of manufactured by hand with individual glow objects, or it's a new procedural system using particles or something that kind of like allows objects to fade in or out kind of really subtly and give a really nice effect. All in all, it's very cool. And that's about all we can gather from this platform mode section, but moving on, it gets just a little bit more juicy. Next, we're plunged right into the editor, and it looks exactly the same, apart from a few new things. First of all, in the edit tab, which RobTop has open, presumably to hide all the new objects that will probably be in the build section, we can see one new scale button, and this is probably a placeholder for the new free transform option that we saw in another sneak peek, where you can drag around individual corners of objects to scale them in specific directions. I'm sure the other scale button is just the old scale we all know and love. We can also see two new checkboxes to the left of all the buttons. I have no idea what they do, but seeing as the SFX trigger is currently selected, I'm sure they have something to do with that. Maybe it's touch trigger or spawn trigger outside of the edit special option. Anyways, moving into the SFX trigger, we can see a ton of controls. We can see speed, pitch, volume, and a bunch of other ones such as reverb, loop, async, and FFT. I don't know what that means. Hopefully RobTop can add one of his little eye buttons that says placeholder. I'm sure he'll love to do that. But yeah, this does confirm a lot about sound effects, like looping is perfect. And as he touches the bottom in the top right, we can see a massive new library of brand new sound effects. I think sound effects are going to be a must-have in Geometry Dash levels when 2.2 drops. And maybe not for a while at the beginning, because at the beginning creators are going to be completely chaotic. They're going to have no clue what to do. I honestly think it might bring in a brand new wave of creators that rise to the top making brand new things. That's going to be really exciting, but we could see so many more just new sound effects. It's insane. And at the beginning with sound effects, I was kind of thinking, oh, they're all going to be the same. They're all going to sound the same. Every level is going to kind of have the same feel if they use a lot of the same sound effects, but there is just so many different sound effects here. I don't really think that'll be a problem. One thing that's interesting about this, and it shows how many new sound effects there are, is how under every single file it says how many files are in there. Actually, at the bottom you can see there, SFX library version 37, SFX count 4,902. That is completely insane. And now we can start to hear some of them. We can see that they actually do have to be downloaded individually. I wonder what problem that causes for downloading levels, because with Geometry Dash levels now, we have to just press the download button on the song, but now you're gonna have to download additional sound effects. Now next up, as the sound is opened, fire in the hole, we can see here just the speed, and as we expected, it pitches down and it slows the speed down as well. Very cool stuff, and a lot more customization opportunities for creators to kind of differentiate their sounds from others. One thing that's really interesting for this, as he adjusts the sliders for the effect, you can actually see the opacity of the trigger panel go down. This is insane for me. I don't know why, because every time I open a trigger, I have to tweak it and then go back out, and then I have to look at the changes it made. But now you can do that while adjusting your individual parameters, which is absolutely insane. That is where the sneak peek ends. That's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like if you liked it, leave a dislike if you disliked it, subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching, and tap out. Peace. See ya.